Welcome, listeners. Thank you for joining us today. Today, I have Astrid of Apples and Beavers with me. So, welcome, Astrid.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So, tell me, first of all, I want to know where the name Apples and Beavers came from, but also for my listeners, let us know how you got into quilting.
Okay, I start with the Apples and Beavers name. It's been a while that I have had this little logo, a bee. I don't know if you're familiar with it. I have it on all of my patterns at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And that logo minus those three dashes that indicate the sewing part of the quilting used to be like my little art logo in high school.
Oh.
So, and I don't know exactly, there was just a time in high school where we all thought we were fancy by coming out with our little signatures, just kind of our fancy artwork.
Yeah.
And that's where that came from. And yeah, I was lucky enough that my last name changed when I got married, but my initials didn't because they both start with a B. So I was able to keep that.
Oh.
And then I come up with a business name. At the time, it wasn't really about business because it was in 2014, I believe, when I just started a blog as a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted it to be memorative, but I didn't want it to be too descriptive because at the time it wasn't just about quilting. It was, I don't know, some baby food, some random arts and crafts, wall murals, like anything I kept myself busy with.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to say it grew from there. It got stuck.
Yeah.
That might be cute and different, but I also feel like I could evolve in all this kind of different directions because it is not too descriptive.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So yeah, so I kind of touched a little bit where I come from. I would say I have been always somebody fascinated and addicted to craft in all kinds of ways. Like, I don't know, when I talk to like relatives who know me or friends who know me from when I grew up, they always knew me as a kid who would always, yeah, just be busy crafting, whether it was felt or wire or little beads or anything. Like, I had tons of that in my little room.
Yeah, me too. I was always doing something.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know, if you have this urge to create something, I think you cannot really do anything against it. It's just, you have to. So I was always busy doing something, but it was, yeah, pretty much anything. And also, I grew up in Germany. You can probably hear from my accent that I'm not Native American. I live in Canada now.
Okay.
So I did not grow up with any exposure really to quilting because quilting is not a thing in Germany. Like, people do arts and crafts and they knit and they crochet, and I guess they also do sewing projects, but like not in that niche of quilting at all.
Oh.
I think there are some that are discovering this as a hobby right now, but it's like not, it doesn't have any tradition over there. So I want to say I grew up without any exposure to that. So I would sew other things like the little drawstring bags, or my mom had a sewing machine when I grew up. Not that she was sewing a lot, but I familiarized myself with that machine at a fairly young age, I believe, and just did small projects or little pillows for my dolls or you name it, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
yeah, and then I don't know, life happened, and at some point I met a Canadian, and in 2014 I moved to Ottawa, and I don't know, I don't want to say that all of a sudden there were quilts all around me, but
You're right.
I don't know, just noticed them more, and there was a cute quilt shop that I started seeing and going to, and I don't know, I've always liked being around fabric. So when my mom would go buy yarn to knit socks or something, I would always make sure I could, when I could, I would join her to go to the department store and just hang out in the fabric section and touch things or just look at things, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, at some point I made my first quilt. I think, yeah, my sister was getting married, and I just felt like, oh, I've heard that this is like the wedding gift to make, right?
Yeah.
So it was a very, very basic quilt. I think I just cut 10 or 12-inch squares with my scissors, sort of a cardboard template, you know, no rotary cutter or anything.
Yeah.
Joined my squares. I got like a terrible package of batting from Walmart, like all really like the polyester, you know. don't know
Mhm.
what that was. It bearded terribly.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know,
Oh,
but apparently it wasn't bad enough because I feel like if I wouldn't say I had a very smooth start to it because also while quilting it, I didn't have a walking foot. I think I broke like 8 or 10 needles just in the process.
oh my gosh.
It was rough, but somehow I still got stuck. So I don't know exactly why.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so, it's funny. Like, I feel like the people I've talked to, their first adventure into quilting has not been very good. It's been like really rocky and lots of problems, but they're still like, gosh dang it, I'm gonna keep quilting. And you're like,
Yeah,
why are we like this?
I don't know because I don't know. I feel like there's so many other hobbies that I probably did not venture into because of that rough start.
Right?
I don't
Like,
know.
yeah, that's so funny. And it's crazy, like, because then that makes you go, oh my gosh, yeah, the quality of materials matters. Because people are like, oh,
Yeah,
you can just quilt any old fabric, or you can just
I grew into appreciating like quality materials and tools so much.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a difference. And like, I think too, always growing up around crafting and just doing lots of different things because my mom's always been really crafty too. And but she's always sewn. And so she was able to kind of show me like you actually want high quality materials. And sometimes, you can go with like the cheaper fabrics or whatever, but if you're doing something that you want to last, you really have to go for the high quality stuff. And it's like, well, it's not cheap, but you know, anything that's lasting isn't, right? So
Yeah.
it's the idea of like what you're putting into it is what you're going to
But
get
I
out of
think
it.
that's so how I've started appreciating like any other people's crafts or art like so much
Yeah.
more. Like I don't know, as a kid, I don't know, you would see like an Etsy listing for something and just feel like, whoa, or just on a craft market for Christmas and just think, how is anybody going to spend that much money for that?
Exactly.
Especially if you have a bit of a crafty talent and you just feel like, yeah, I could probably do something similar, right?
Hmm.
But I don't know. It's
Yeah.
different now.
Yeah. Well, so once you made that quilt for your sister's wedding, was there a long gap between the next time you made a quilt, or did you start right
Um,
away? Or
there wasn't a long gap. I would say it was generally at a time where like making a quilt was still keeping me busy for an extended period of time. So I wouldn't just whip it up in a weekend like I do now.
sure.
I think I got hooked right away, and I was probably figuring out the next one while I was still in that project. But I didn't
Hmm.
feel like boom, boom, boom. There were all my quilts. I was still doing small projects to like make a zipper pouch here or do this and do that,
Hmm.
using up my scraps. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know. And then I felt like all these little projects, or I made bibs for my kids, or like they were, yeah, still fairly
Hmm.
small at the time, or decorations for their room, or just like a changing table cover, like basically a quilt, but also really small, just like a bench mat,
Yeah.
stuff like that. And yeah, and I was spending some time on Pinterest, like all the time, to
Yeah.
just look for inspiration, what I could make, and this and that. And then I just found myself referred more and more often to Instagram, which I was like never on at the time. Like I had a Facebook account, but I was never really into social media at all.
Hmm.
I still don't call myself a social media person because I'm trying to like exclusively do that for the business side of it. But I did create like an Instagram account at some point, like also more, I think, to look for more inspiration or for more connection with like-minded people, because in my family, like there's not a lot of crafters. Not like my mom would hem pins, or she would like occasionally make us a Halloween costume or something, but
Hmm.
she wasn't doing a lot.
Yeah.
So it was more about like finding more inspiration, and then it was kind of a like I didn't plan to make this my business. It was at a time where I had small kids, where I wasn't really looking into getting back to work at all. But I started showing what I made, and then like pretty much right from the start, I had people, oh, you need to make a pattern. I want this.
Yeah.
So without thinking much, because I mentioned I already have the blog, so I needed to figure out how to add a shop functionality to it, but I already had like sort of the platform to serve it to people.
Mm-hmm.
So I used it. And
Yeah.
like for this month, I had, yeah, my first the little kingdom pattern out was like the little castle and tower that
Okay.
were at the time really just an add-on to another quilt pattern that I came along, pen and paper patterns by Lindsay Neal. And I just loved her little trees and houses. I don't know. I still have like a soft spot for house quilts because I find they're so cozy and neighborhood and just the thought of all of that togetherness and that all works so well.
Yeah.
I just felt like, okay, but I need to bring my own spin to it
Mm-hmm.
because I'm terrible in following instructions. I always just look at the pictures more and then.
Yeah. Yeah. Reading the directions is really hard. I'm visual too. So I want diagrams, I want pictures, I want examples.
Yeah, so then I figured, yeah, I don't even know exactly how that happened, but it just felt like, yeah, okay, I have a little girl and she needs a quilt at some point, and let's add some castles instead of the houses. So it
Yeah.
was just a quilt block pattern at the time, and people could buy that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, by now I transformed it into a pillowcase pattern, so it's a standalone and it doesn't require the other pattern to go with it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's so fun. And now you've got a bunch of patterns and that's so fun.
but
Well,
it's also, I don't know, I didn't really plan for that niche either. Like it's all people see it now, they think, oh, fairy tale and space. And
mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. It's just, I guess, my kids and
Yeah.
what interested in. And
Yeah. Well, there's so much whimsy in your style and what you come up with. And I think it's so fun. You can kind of interchange, different block patterns with and add them into the larger patterns that you have and kind of
yeah,
customize what you've made.
it was also not an idea that I had like from the start, really. Well, to be honest, I did like the dragon was my first bigger pattern that I also
Mm-hmm.
saw like there was like so many people who had contacted me who wanted this to be ready today or better not even yesterday, right?
Right.
To stitch up. And I just felt like, okay, I have this dragon, but when I launched this, how can I maybe encourage people to also buy my other pattern, right? I don't
Yeah.
know if it was greedy or if I was creative, but I don't know. And then realized that it was a baby quilt, and then there were people say, yeah, but I want to make this for myself. How about you come up with an option to make it bigger? So
Mm,
then I had this castle tree set up around to make it into like a more significant row size.
yeah.
And that worked like right off the start. And then I just kept doing this because I don't know, it's just work to add on something later because I also wanted all my patterns to be independent. Like you can
Mm,
purchase a pattern and then you're able to finish like a complete project. You're not just left with a block.
right.
And if you don't have that creative need to change it or to customize it, you can
Mm-hmm.
just follow the directions and you have your pattern.
Yeah.
But then if you wanted to, you could.
Right. Yeah. It's so they're so cute. And I love that, you've been willing to be flexible and give people what they want, but also staying true to your style and what, makes you happy in the process and the designing. So it's a really
Yeah,
cool.
I think I have actually struggled with that for quite a bit because as soon as I released the dragon, I did have people say, "You need to make a unicorn." You know, we want unicorns, and I always felt like, no, I can't do it. Like I'm not a unicorn, candy, rainbow, colorful, happy clouds.
Mm-hmm.
Sparkly. No, can't do it.
Yeah.
Not me. But then these requests kept coming, and at some point I just thought, okay, give it a shot. So here's my sheet of graph paper and I'll just try. Like if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But
Yeah. And now here
it's
you are.
better than myself, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I'm so happy I did because I love the result.
Yeah.
And it's really like the kind of unicorn that is me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Doesn't maybe look like the unicorns you would see in the cartoon for the kids movies, but that's also like I'm not for this like really, really sweet
like your people find you, right? So when you're niched in and you're doing what you love and you're staying true to yourself, the people who resonate with that as well, they find you and they'll be loyal to you. And so I think even though it might not be someone else's unicorn, it's definitely going to be for other people too. Like,
yeah,
it might not be, super sweet candy rainbows, whatever, but like there's also the option as quilters, we can buy a pattern and then we can also further personalize it by putting our own twists in it by fabric choice and you know those
yeah.
things. And so I think just giving people a good base, they can run with it, and then if they love your style, they're gonna still come find you even if you don't adhere to certain other people's standards, if that makes sense. But
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I totally agree. And if I think I had been talking to somebody else and giving that sort of advice, I think I would have said the same thing. I just find it always, for some reason, so much harder to apply your own truth and your own convictions to yourself.
yeah.
I don't know. I must say, though, I was a little bit maybe nervous. It said a bit hard, but you have seen the cover with that really dark purple background and stuff. And I find those were like sort of moody fall colors and all of that. And I was not sure if that would resonate with a lot of people.
Oh, I
But
loved it.
yeah, it's great. I wasn't sure. Like there's always so much
Yeah.
uncertainty, right? Especially if you build up for like a project for so long. Like I think I drafted that unicorn last or earlier this year, like in January or so, and I didn't release it until
Oh, wow.
September, which is still like a long period of time. But if it's always there and you're just
Right.
like you worked on it, right? So for me, it was always there, but I didn't share it until like 2 weeks prior or so,
Yeah.
and that's the moment where you feel like, so what's happened now? I spent so much time on it. Better.
Yeah. Like people better like this. Well, from what I can tell, it was really well received and it's so cute. And I loved the moodiness, like the moody fall colors. I mean, I like bright, happy colors too, but I kind of really lean into those kind of deeper tones, and that's really it sang to me. So I think,
Thank you. No, that's good to hear. I don't know. I just felt like I need to do the way I would do it
yeah,
because, and that worked.
yeah, yeah. And I think, just that keeping into that idea of keeping true to yourself. And like you said, it can be really hard because you worry what other people are going to think, but I've found in my own life and regard to whatever I'm doing, it doesn't matter if it's the podcast or if it's the quilts I'm making or just being out in public with my friends, the more true I stay to who I am, even when it's hard, the better the results. I feel better about the situation. The people who truly support me are the ones who are going to be there no matter what. And you know there's always going to be haters somewhere, but you just have to kind of tune them out and just be like, this is my thing. This is what I want to make. And if you don't like it, you don't have to, So
Yeah.
kind
So
of,
you can try to be mainstream. That's not my goal, and I wouldn't. I don't know, but
yeah. Yeah. But I think you found a really cool spot in the quilting world because you're making these cute, whimsical things that maybe aren't necessarily like super cutesy in essence, but I think like I was saying before, you have all these options for personalizing and you have little block patterns that you can add into the larger quilts if people wanted to make them bigger and stay true to the style of what you've created. And I think that's so fun because you can really stick with your style and further personalize and still
yeah, it's
still
so
use
it's so rewarding when you get messages of people like they send you an email and say, "Hey, I made this, and I don't know, I added the stars to the dragon," and it's so like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense. Why didn't I think of that?
right. But that's also fun too, because then you're getting even more creative ideas from the people who are using your patterns and they're putting their own creative vision into it and giving it a different life. And I think that's kind of a fun perspective on, what you're doing. I don't design patterns, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but I just think, we have our own vision and our own perspectives and like what we see. And then when other people can interject theirs into it and help you see a new perspective, it's like, oh my gosh, you're right. That is a cool way to do that. Or, oh, I never thought of that. Now you've got a new option to share with people. And I think that's cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So do you have like a million quilts around your house, or are you kind of minimalist with it?
I've started putting them aside, and I'm thinking of maybe doing a sample sale later this year, just because I have more than I can realistically use in my house.
Yeah.
But I do want to say the kids each have one or two. Yeah, usually they have a bed quilt that stays in their bed, and then they have a cuddle quilt for the TV or to build for or whatever.
Yeah.
But I have also gifted them away. Like it's not. Yeah. I don't think I have more quilts than other people that are like being actually used.
Yeah, I have a lot, but I think a lot of times, like, I think like, oh, I could probably get rid of some, but at the same time, we use them all the time. Like,
but you didn't say that you even have this Airbnb where you rotate all your quilts just to have a reason.
Well, I mean, it just happened that I did have, some good quilts around that I could, use for that because I had some excess, but, I want to make it an excuse to keep making more quilts, but at the same time, like my conservationist brain is like, please don't, like, that's too much. And so I think if I'm gonna do new quilts for that, I'll probably like cycle out the ones I have and gift them or try to sell them or something, because I think there is a point where it can be a lot.
I don't have the perfect long-term plan yet, so I think I'll see how that sample sale goes, and if that's something that works. And like it's not my main business, right? So I don't need to make like prime prices for that,
right?
But I also don't want to give them away for free, so let's see if I can somewhere find like a good middle ground.
Yeah, and I think
keep making samples, and at the same time, I don't think I'm somebody who makes like tons and tons of samples for my patterns all the time. Like if I'm writing a new pattern, I probably have one main sample and then one secondary one with like an add-on or something just to show it off. But I don't think, like right now, I also can't make like hundreds and hundreds of quotes.
Right. Yeah, it's time consuming. And I think, especially when you're trying to run a business, it's like, okay, what is going to get me through doing the things I need to do for the business aspect? Get the job done, get the point across, and then, if you have testers or whatever, then you can show off their work. And you don't have to have, 20 different versions of your quilt. You can let other people make different versions. And show those. So
that's really, as I said before, it was not really a business that I had planned for a long time. I grew into it, and I think now looking back, a lot of things went really well, and it makes more sense now looking back than
right
at the time. Really, it was more random, right? Because in the beginning, it was more like, okay, let's sell a few patterns. Maybe I'll get to the point where that pays my fabric, right? I didn't necessarily see that as like a main income for my family or something that I could like really grow after. It was like, I'm at home, I have those kids, like this is fun. Let's share this with the world.
Yeah.
And let's go from there. And now that I'm like a little more serious about it, I didn't necessarily expect it to like take so much time and computer work and behind the scenes. Like I spend so much less time with my sewing machine or whatever.
Yeah. That's kind of a common thing I keep hearing from pattern designers, is that they spend so much time on the computer with the design and not as much time sewing and quilting as they used to. And I think there are, my business is slightly different, but I think there are some kind of things about having the business that you don't necessarily think about. You're like, oh, it'd be so fun. I can make all these quilts for people and,
Yeah.
get to quilt, but not have to keep the quilts or, spend the money on the
Yeah.
fabrics and stuff and feel good that I'm doing something for someone else. But yeah, it's like the amount of time I spend talking to people online or through Etsy or, just answering questions and getting specifics through people. And then,
Yeah,
there's,
making choices, confirming with people, invoicing them after, right? Like,
Mhm.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So there's just so much more to it than just like, oh yeah, I just sit at home and quilt all day. I quilt very little compared to, what it might appear, just because of all the administrative tasks that you have to do behind the scenes as the person in charge of your business. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and especially now over the last year, in March, my daughter lost her daycare job. Not her,
oh,
but her spot in daycare.
okay.
For the rest of the year, I just had to see how to deal with that, right? Because she was at home with me, and she is not a little girl who likes to play by herself a lot right now. So and I started to think, okay, I have these patterns, I have these projects that I really want to get out this year. Like all of these deadlines were just self-imposed, and I wasn't
Sure.
owing anybody anything. So it was really just myself, but I still had some goals that I wanted to reach. And then at
Right.
that point, I decided to actually hire out most of my sample making because that
Yeah.
was like so much easier to delegate than writing the pattern itself, and to like customer
Mhm.
service kind of tricky. Like if they want to answer questions answered, and I'm the person who knows, it's hard to delegate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's nice to have someone else to lean on and say, hey, can you handle this aspect for me so I can, focus on this other area of my life? And
Examples of the patterns that I released this year, I only made half of them.
right. And I think that's okay. I mean, I think it's really easy to fall in the trap of thinking that you have to be the one to do everything. And I fall into that really easily. And I think,
Yeah,
oh my gosh,
for sure.
yeah. So I think it's good and it's a good practice to ask for help when we need it. And even if it's in regard to our own personal business, like it's still okay to get that help and to get that community involvement. I think the more I learn about, the brain and human development and our emotional development as people, and like community keeps coming up as the most important piece of healing and growth. And so
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, so it is important that we lean into each other and that we call on each other when we need help, and find other healthy, willing people that are share our vision and want to help us grow as well. And so I love that. I think it's great that you
I
had
don't think
people.
that I felt guilty or that I felt like it was a failure to hire it out. I just
That's
it
good.
was a little bit attached to it because like the sewing part is still one of my favorite parts of it,
Right.
right? So I feel like I keep that little part away, or at least partially.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it worked out. It's fine.
Yeah. And is she now in school or
Yeah, she started kindergarten in
okay?
September. But yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Oh man. Kindergarten can be tricky because, some kids are just like, yeah, I love school. I'm so excited. And some kids are like, I am not ready. I just want to be at home with mom.
I think she didn't know exactly herself because I don't know, here in Ontario we have junior and senior kindergarten, so we have 2 years. Kids
Okay.
start the year they turn 4,
Okay.
and so they might be younger than in some areas where they start kindergarten.
Hmm.
But since she is the third of 3, I always felt like, yeah, and she has always been doing all this stuff with the boys, and she has been coming around. She has seen it every day when I went them to school, and then we came back, and then she told me like all of last year, she told me, no, I want to stay, I want to go too.
Yeah.
So like for the first 2 days of school, and then she started, come home, can I come back with you?
Yeah. You're like, no.
And she's fine. It's just that moment in the morning where she has to say goodbye that we're struggling with. But
yeah, that adjustment period can take a minute, but
we have fabulous teachers and they know our others, so we have good connections already.
yeah,
It's all good. I know
yeah,
she's in good hands. And
yeah,
I
I
know she's
think,
going all day.
yeah, yeah, she'll get there. I think it's funny, like how every kid is just so different in a family, and how you just have to like treat each one with their own personality. And, it's like one might love school, the other one might not love it so much. I mean, thankfully my boys have always loved school and that hasn't been, you know, a problem, but they're still very different humans. And so it's just funny how they just,
Yeah, I think ours for the most part they like it too. Like I mean,
yeah.
but I think while our oldest, he would just have like made a pouty face, but he would still have just walked in the door and just done what he was told. Like our youngest, he would just sit down in the middle of the road and have her tantrum. You're just
Yeah.
you think you're prepared after the older siblings, but not necessarily.
No. Yeah, the baby always throws a curveball in, right?
Yeah, seems like it.
Yeah, it's funny to see them grow and change and just get their own little lives and their
That's funny.
personality.
Like, in the beginning, I also started like that quilting hobby, sewing. I don't know, just as something to have besides the kids, right? As something that's just my own.
Right.
But then started making all kinds of stuff for them or stuff that was inspired by them. So really, it was not anything that I could separate.
Right. You're like, well, I guess this is just my life.
Yeah, I guess. Because then, I don't know, at some point, our oldest Igor requested a rocket quilt. So I had to make a rocket quilt and then
Yeah.
go from there.
Yeah. It's so fun. And I think honestly, like I love when things are inspired by the people I love, because I feel really good about making it and it feels more exciting to me. Like, oh, I get to show this person, how much I care about them and how much what they love means to me, that I'm putting it into a quilt or making something for them specifically.
Like at a very young age, they were like my biggest fans, and they were just, "Aw."
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, that's so cool. You're like, I know, isn't it? Oh, that's so great. Have any of them shown an interest in, designing or making their own quilts or?
Yeah, a little bit. Like when I'm like drafting stuff where they have used my coloring sheets also to color them out, or they have modified stuff, or they have just started drawing things following like the grid on graph paper.
Mhm.
I don't know, like we haven't really sewn a lot, which is mostly because I find they need to focus on one and they don't get a lot of one-on-one time. So we haven't really had the chance too much. I'm
Yeah.
kind of tempted to snack my oldest and have him help me during my upcoming sew along.
Yeah. That would
So
be
if
fun.
I don't know exactly how much I can involve him just because like it's not necessarily like a super beginner pattern, but
Yeah.
he will have close vision, so maybe
Yeah.
I'll try.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think I was also not necessarily trying to involve him too much because I wanted it as like I don't know, didn't necessarily want to share it.
Yeah. No, I can understand that.
I don't know. I think it sounds a bit selfish, but I just felt like I have toys all over the house. I have everything like they claim everything. I just didn't want my sewing machine.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair because, I think sometimes as much as we want our kids to share in hobbies that we have or things that we love, I think it's really important too to have that space to go, no, this is just mine. This is something I do. And if you find your way to it, awesome. And if you want help, if they start asking questions or whatever, I'm sure that's fine. But I think, as parents, we forget that we're our own person too. Like we're not just your mom, you know. Like,
yeah, that's why I've been waiting a little bit for them to show interest on their own, which
yeah,
like one is starting to, and he wants to know how like the thread goes through the machine and down and through the needle and what happens.
yeah,
So I think it's fun, maybe more fun now. Like I've never tried to serve it to them on a silver tablet saying, here, want to
yeah,
quote, let's see.
yeah. No, and I think that's good too, because sometimes I think it's easy to start shoving things onto our kids. Like, well, you're going to like this because I love it. And so I want you to love it. And instead,
Mhm.
if they naturally find their way to it because they see what you're doing and it piques their interest and then they come to you, I think that's even more special because then they're showing their own genuine interest and not just, oh, my mom makes me sew with her. You know.
Yeah. Well, I find it funny that you said that because interestingly, I've heard so many quilters that say like, I have resisted my grandma or my mom trying to teach me how to quilt for so long,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I haven't done it, and I haven't loved it, and then all of a sudden, life circumstances or whatever, I actually gave it a try, and then I started loving it. But I
Yep.
really didn't want to before.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
how I was. I, the sewing machine gave me so much anxiety as a kid when my mom was trying to show me, and I was terrified to break her machine because she sewed all the time. And so, it was just one of those things where I was like, I would just rather not and never have to be responsible for having broken her machine or put a wrench in her craft and her hobby. And then, you know,
yeah,
my two of my three best friends had started quilting, convinced the other two of us to start. And then even though that was very hard and awful and I cried a lot, I think you see the end product and you're like, okay, that was worth it.
now I can struggle.
Yeah, I'm like, well, wait, now I get to wrap myself in this thing that I made. And I mean, it's on my bed right now. It's falling apart in some spots because I used to ignore seam allowances and try to get it as close to the edge as possible because I don't know. I felt like I was wasting fabric or something. But it's fine. I can just now I'm like, oh, I know how to fix that. So I'm not super worried about it.
Yeah,
But I think it just ends up
then
being
you
one of
can
those.
also do so many different streams and like techniques and
Mm-hmm,
like if you just want to whip up something quick, you can. But if you want to get lost in detail, you can also. Or you
exactly.
can quote into a thing, or you can try and send it off to someone like you, or you can.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I didn't even long arm my first quilt. My friend did because she had already learned how to long arm and was renting the machines at the quilt shop that we all learned at, and she took it and long armed it for me, and she just did a meander, but it was cute because she like put hearts into it, and she I I always have a hard time finding it because she hit it so well, but she put a heart A because my husband and I both have A's starting our name. And so we have the same initials, which is funny, um, but yeah, it's just cute. And so I love that, like my friends, and then my other friend who had, the two who were previously quilting, Beth was the one who bound it for me. And then Jen is the one who long armed it for me. So,
So it
um,
was really a community project too.
yeah, exactly. And they were the ones who helped me put it together. I mean, I did all the sewing of the piecing, but they showed me how to do it. And so it really was a community project. It really was like, the three people outside of like my husband and my family that I trust the very most with things, guided me through this thing that I now love. And, it's all I think about most of the time. And I know it's silly because I'm like always talking about quilting, but I'm like, it's become a huge passion in my life. And so I don't care. If people don't want to hear me talk about quilting, they can just press mute, but or they can walk away from me. I don't know, but yeah. So I think it's just a fun reminder that yeah, that community piece again, right? Like that was so important in building my love of quilting is having people around me that cared enough to help me. My mom included, even though I ran away from her sewing advice for so long. She's like, "Oh, now you want to sew." I'm like, "Yeah, so about that."
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so maybe your kids will come to it later and maybe not, but at least they'll always know, they'll have seen the process and how much work goes into it. And so now they'll always have an appreciation for other quilts and other people's crafting. Cause I think when you see that, then
Yeah, or just that idea that you can do things, or you can make things, or you can just
yeah,
create what you make. You
yeah,
don't really have to go to the store to buy something.
exactly. Like, oh, there's a way to do that myself. And yeah, and I think showing our kids that like the problem solving process, thinking through, multiple solutions to a problem. And I think quilting solves a lot of problems and just the skills involved, and it helps your brain think a different way. And so there's definitely times where I call it my quilt brain when I'm like in thinking about quilts. It's like actually helped me solve other problems because I was able to look at it from different angles. So yeah. 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 So, okay, so Unicorn Garden just came out this month in September. It's so cute. And so do you have any like new projects you're working on, or are you just going to be focusing on that so long for a while before you?
I think like I do have like, I don't know, always too much on my list that I want to make. I'm not even getting started, but I do want to focus on that so long also, just because it's my first so long and I just don't want to screw up. And
Sure. That's
I
fair.
don't know exactly how much time actually goes into it, because I don't know, writing a blog post is something I've done lots of times before. I have a feeling how much that is, but I don't know how many people are going to contact me for support, or like need more than that, or what else goes into it.
Right.
So I don't want to have any other timelines in parallel.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If I have spare time, I will work on something. If not, it's fine.
Yeah.
I don't have any other deadlines for the rest of the year.
That's good though. I think, yeah, trying to focus on one thing at a time is good, especially when it's the first time you've done a so long, I've never participated
I'm trying to appreciate, and I'm also learning to appreciate my flexibility that way, because sometimes I find it hard to not have somebody to tell me, today we do this. But if you don't, whatever, right? So I like to decide every day again, what am I focusing on, because I have limited resources and limited time, right? So what is going to move the needle, or what am I going to do today, or what do I just need for myself, or
right. Yeah. Yeah. It's when you are your own boss.
Yeah, or yes, on a day like today where the kids are at home, like I don't know what I would do in a different job. I just find it like, I'm thankful for the flexibility, but then on other days it's just like, yeah, but why do I have to take the cut again?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So
it's like
side, but
yeah. Yeah. When you're the boss and you're the one making the decisions and the schedule, and you're like, oh, too much decision making.
Yeah.
I get just
so I'm not, I don't owe anybody any reporting. Like, it's fine.
Yeah. That's nice. That is nice. So you can be flexible and you can say, you know what, I'm not going to set these deadlines because I want to do this other thing. And so I think that's cool that you're not beholden to someone else's timelines. So
yeah, which I don't know. I have regretted, or not regretted, sounds a bit hard, but I have been contacted by a few people, companies over the last 2 years if I wanted to do some cooperation, or I did do this and that. And like most of the time, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'd love to, but I can't commit.
Yeah.
It takes me as long as it takes. And if that's good for you, cool. If not, sorry. Those are my boundaries right now. I just can't.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Which also, like, it was more about the fun than any like big financial background with it.
Yeah.
It's just something that it can be a bit lonely
to
be limited to like customer online and social media connections for the most part. Because you see the likes and you see the shares and it's all nice, but you don't actually know most of those people.
Right. You're still just sitting in your house alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why it's always different when they actually send you a picture with their baby on their quilt and you just feel like, "Aw."
Yeah.
It did make a difference, or it's like changed somebody, or it somebody struggled with something and they made it through, or it meant something to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel silly like asking people to, when we've made quilts for them and sent them off, I'm like, please, if you share on social media, please tag us. And it feels kind of silly, but at the same time, I'm like, no, I want to see that you're taking the thing that I just spent so many hours making for you and that you're incorporating it in your life, or that, showing that you've gifted it to the person that you said you were giving it to, and their reaction. And, especially we've made a couple of like pretty painstaking quilts for people that ended up beautiful and so cool, and mostly worth it. Not totally, but mostly worth it. And it's like, and then we don't hear anything. And I'm like, oh, I want to know, like, did your girlfriend love it, or did your mom love, it's like, who, I want to know, please tell me, because I think,
you get attached to it, right? Because you go through your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there have been a few people, who've gone back onto our Etsy shop and shared a picture along with their review. And that makes me happy, because then I'm like, okay, they feel good showing it, instead of just being like, it was great. And then maybe they're just being nice,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, no, I want to see the pictures. Like, I made this really gorgeous quilt in January. It was like, it's the Mountain Valley pattern by,
Okay.
oh my gosh, my brain just went blank on her name. Anyway, yeah. And it was all pinks and purples. And she was just, this girl in her 20s just buying a quilt for herself because she wanted it. And I was like, heck yes, I'm so excited to make this for you.
Yeah.
And she did. She sent pictures and shared them of the quilt on her bed, just like she said. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. Like, it's just so satisfying. And I think as quilters, and especially when we're creating for other people, it does mean something to get to see it in action, and see that people are actually loving it and using
but I think
it.
that's also like a privilege of this specific type of business that I don't know. I don't know. We're selling something that's supposed to make people happy, whether it's through the post process of creating, or for the being gifted to them, or what it is.
Yeah.
It's mostly only connected with good things, good feelings.
Yeah.
Maybe the pain of making it sometimes, but
sometimes. Oh, there's a few quilts I've wanted to light on fire, but I didn't, and it ended up being fine. But yeah, I think there's such a labor of love behind it, that it really does matter that the people that are on the receiving end do like it, and that it comes full circle. It's like, you want to see the end result of that, whatever it is. If it's people making your patterns and being so happy with the end result, or people requesting a quilt be long armed, or having us make a quilt for them from start to finish, like, we want to know that the finished product is what you wanted, and that it's going to carry the weight that you wanted it to carry. So yeah. So I think sometimes social media can be good for that, because then you do get to see those things. But if people don't tag you,
yeah, I don't know. I just find social media also has its kinks sometimes. Like, some days it doesn't work, or
yeah, it's tricky. Well, I'm so excited that your unicorn is out there and living, and that that you stayed true to yourself in creating something that other people wanted, but it fits right along with everything else, and it's definitely you. It's got your personality, and you can just see that it came from your brain, and because it goes with all the other things you've created, and in sense of style, and just how it looks. And so I appreciate that. I love seeing something and instantly being able to recognize that it belongs to a certain person. And so
I don't know, I find that's always so hard to see or to describe your own style.
Yeah.
Or just recognize it. I don't know. I see that I made this bird, and that I made the dragon, and that I made the unicorn, but to me they don't necessarily all look cohesive. But
yeah, I don't know. I think I see your hand in all of it. And so maybe we don't always see it for ourselves, but I definitely can tell. And as soon as it popped up on my feed, before I even saw that it was, your Instagram, I was like, that's Astrid. I was like, oh my gosh, it's so cute. Like, I could just tell right away. So
I
really,
pumped.
Yeah, I think it's really special. And so I'm really excited to see people's versions and their, see the sew along, and I won't be
Yeah,
participating,
that's
unfortunately.
also why I'm so excited about it because yeah, just it's just going to be a bigger number of people hopefully sharing about it, just
Yeah.
showing off what they made.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
And getting to see other people's visions of what it can be is, I think, is
yeah,
going to be so fun. So,
yeah. Because there's always people who will just do it completely differently, just because they start to go scrappy, or because they do this, because they add
hmm,
an embroidery or whatever after, and
yeah,
yeah, there's so
that'll be
many
so
ways.
fun. So, is there like an official sign up for it, or are you just having them follow along through
Um,
Instagram?
I do have a sign up form on my website, just because then that's the way how I can make sure that they get their weekly emails and get
Hmm.
fed what they need to for that
Okay,
week. It's not like it's all free. There's no.
sure.
I will also, once the so long is over, I will probably make it public on my website. I just didn't want to have to do it while I'm still in the middle of it.
Hmm.
I would want it to be usable as a resource after, like the pattern is the pattern, and it should have all the instructions that you need to make it. But if you want some extra support along the way, it
Right.
will be available on my website as well.
Okay.
But I think that's going to happen after it's done.
Yeah,
So
sure.
until November. So
Okay, so they can go to your website and sign up if they want to participate, and otherwise it'll be the further support will be there after the sew along is over.
yeah, because I am planning to have like a blog post or
Okay.
for every week that we're doing, where I'm giving tips on the cutting part and on the piecing part, and just staying organized, because there's probably more different pieces than in most patterns.
Yeah.
How to make the experience as smooth and as enjoyable as it can be.
Hmm.
I just think, if like, I want people to sign up now and then to follow through if they can.
Yeah.
So they will have access during those 6 weeks, and then afterwards it will also be accessible by everybody else, who, whether they joined or didn't.
Sure.
I just find I'm a little worried that I might create some mix up for people or myself if they get the weekly emails and then also see it in my constant feed on my website, where it just
Mhm.
pops up as the blog posts become available. I'd rather do it all at once and
Yeah.
just be organized about it.
Yeah. That makes sense. That's awesome. Okay, well, we'll definitely link your website in the show notes so people can get to that, and um that'll be so cool. And otherwise on Instagram, your apples and beavers.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So people can get to you there as well.
There. You can technically find me on Facebook as well, but I understand it's mostly just a mirror image of what's happening on Instagram, because I have the check mark there to post
Yeah.
there as well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't do it all.
Yeah.
I'm mostly focusing on Instagram because I find it's also what I have been doing for the longest time.
Hmm.
You can
Yeah.
also find me on Pinterest, but I find it's different there because it's not that process that I'm sharing. It's more like trying to get catchy pictures,
Yeah.
right? To
Yeah.
go to my website and ideally purchase something in my store.
Yeah.
Which is,
Yeah.
and you don't have that parallel or synchronous feed there. I find it pops up whenever.
Hmm. Yeah. It's a different beast.
So yeah, unless you're looking specifically for a dragon quilt or a unicorn quilt,
Yeah.
I think it'll be more random whether or not you come across or not.
Yeah. Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I've really appreciated chatting with you and learning about your journey. And
Thanks for
I'm,
having me.
yeah, I'm so excited to share out, with people about your sew along, and hopefully, more people will hear about it and join with you, because I think it's such a cute project, and I'm excited to see the versions that people make, and just to see all the different creative ideas out there for it. So,
Can't wait. It'll be
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.